episode of the Optimistic Met Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Osberger. And on today's episode, are the Mets going to miss the playoffs? Is this possible? How can this happen? Well, besides playing hacky sack and hot potato with the baseball over the weekend, and they did have 5 errors, this is something that has been going on all year, right? This has been a slow burn. They've been leaking oil the entire season, so to speak. And they've been in the playoffs, at least in the standings, since early April, right? And they haven't really relinquished that. They were at one point in first place of the division. They had the 4th wildcard playoff spot. Then they fell down to the 5th, the 6th. And then for most of the year, they've held on to that 6th spot, right? That's been something that, I thought they would hold on to. But here we are. We had, at the beginning of the year, the starting pitching was doing great. Then they started, not being able to go 5 innings. They were overworking the bullpen. You've had an inconsistent offense. You name it, the Mets did it. This is on them. And it's a shame because I went to a bunch of games this year. Citi Field was packed. A lot more fans have believed in this team, not just me, but majority. I think they've had the largest attendance in Citi Field history. So, shout out to all the Met fans that went to Citi Field this year to represent. I'm going to continue to represent on this show. I'm going to continue to represent out in the streets wearing my gear. Got this new hat. Got a couple other hats that I'll debut during the off season. I'm always wearing my jerseys, always wearing my shirts, and that's not going to change. I still believe in this team. Maybe even a little bit delusional. You can call me that. That's fine. I've gotten comments on TikTok. I appreciate all the feedback on TikTok. Calling me delusional and that, hey man, the Mets aren't going anywhere. But I still believe that they have a shot. As crazy as that sounds, all they got to do is win on this road trip, right? I think, looking at the schedules, the Mets have 3 against the Cubs and 3 against the Florida Marlins, or the Miami Marlins, whatever you want to call them. Is it going to be tough? Yes. I think they can win 4 out of 6 on the road if they get their heads out of their asses. That's obviously easier said than done. But when I look at it, this is the time when David Peterson got to show up, right? I looked at the pitching matchups, or at least the pitching schedule for the Mets. Got 2 starts. 2. David, you got to win at least 1. This is it. You got the 3 young guys going, 1 more shot. McLean on Thursday. You got Tong on Wednesday. You got Sproat on Friday. I don't want to put all the pressure on these guys. The young guys got to come through. Everybody got to win. Make your legacy count this year. Make it kind of how it felt like in 2015, right? When we relied on all the young guys to pitch. This is your time to start the new era, if you will, with the Mets starting rotation. This is their chance. Got 6 games left, and then you got the so-called piggyback tag team combination of Holmes and Minaya one more time. This is it, that's the season. So if these guys don't show up and pitch, we got no shot. As far as the starting rotation, that's what it is. It's going to come down to all those guys to step up and to give us innings, give us length, be dominant on the road. Unfortunately, though, the Mets have sucked on the road. I know that. But 1 week can change all that. Just get into the playoffs. Let's get our rotation together. And then let's move forward into the playoffs. I know that's a lot to ask. It's like my plea to the Mets to just make this happen. You can still make it happen. because looking at the Reds schedule, I see they play the Pirates, who they do have Skeens going in one of those games. So Paul Skeens going for the Cy Young. He's going to want that last victory to be dominant. So, I do see the Reds beating the Pirates 2 out of 3. But then I see the Brewers knocking them out. I don't think that the Brewers are going to want the Reds to get in. That's a divisional matchup, a rivalry there. I know that's kind of silly to say, oh, let's hope that another team helps us get in. But unfortunately, we're going to need all the help we can get. I see the Reds going 3-3 the last 6 games. The Mets got to go at least 4-6. If we end up tying, going 3-3, then we go home, and that's it. And then, someone's going to have to take the hit. And I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see Mendoza get fired, unjustly. I know he had a rough year this year, but he did get us to the NLCS last year. So, I do think that bought him a 3rd year. And David Stearns, you know what? I was wrong. The trades didn't work out. But you know what? It can still turn itself around, because we said that last year with Stanek and Maton, right? And those guys, at least Stanek, pitched well in the postseason. That can still happen with Helsley and Soto. And you know what? Rogers has been pretty good. So, it's a tall ask to ask all these players to step up in the last 6 games, but that's where we're at. I expect big things from the big 3. Listen, Lindor, you know what? If I got to call you out, man, you're not stepping up like the so-called unnamed captain that everybody said you were. I was backing you up for that all year, but you haven't really stepped up. You got to step up. Even your defense has been a little suspect. That's unfortunate for Lindor. He's usually a Gold Glove shortstop. He's been messing up a lot. The defense of the Mets, I think, has been the biggest Achilles heel of this team. And Lindor has been one of those biggest culprits at shortstop, which is surprising because he's usually a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. As far as Alonso and Soto, you got to keep mashing. That's huge. Soto having one of those unbelievable underrated seasons that go unappreciated because it started out slow. But he's come on really hot. I expect him to do that the next 6 games. Alonso, keep getting those clutch hits, those clutch home runs, those clutch doubles. We need you, buddy. Earn that lifetime Met contract that you want, Pete. Okay, this is the week that you got to do it. And then everybody else got to step up. I mean, we're going to have to rely on Vientos and Beatty and McNeil and Nemo. Marte's been killing us. The offense got to step up and be clutch. Everybody got to contribute. Let's do it. This is the time we got to do it. This has been kind of like a plea podcast. It's I'm still going to be optimistic, but this is kind of do or die for everybody. Enough talking about it. Let's do it. All year they've had this kind of self-proclaimed confidence, like they think they're going to get there. If the season ended Sunday, we would have been knocked out of the playoffs. So let's go. Let's stop talking like we're champions and let's start playing like it. We can still make the playoffs. We can still align ourselves to get to the World Series if we can get to the postseason. Getting to the postseason, once we get there, if we get there, it's going to be a rough road. We got to go through LA first. It looks like LA's going to get that 3rd spot in the playoffs. That's going to be tough. But I feel we can beat this team. We can beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers haven't beaten everybody all year. It's been, a rough road. But let's just get to the playoffs. If we get to the playoffs, we can do some damage. I strongly believe that. I know a lot of other people don't. But listen, this is what baseball is all about, right? It sometimes doesn't make any sense. I could see the Mets actually getting deep into the playoffs again if they win this week. And it's going to be tough. It's been grueling. It's been kind of hard to fathom this roster not getting to the postseason. Will it will it happen? I still think that it can. But this is it. Mendoza, you gotta coach him up. I know it's hard, um, and he's kind of been taking a lot of the hits lately, so I do give him credit there. But looking at what could happen, you know, your job is on the line right now, so this is kind of your fault, um, to a certain degree. I don't blame it all on Mendoza, but at the same time, this is when you could right the ship the last week of the year, like I said. So let's hope that the Mets do that. And looking at it, again, like I said, if they make the playoffs, I think they have a team that has a lot of clutch performance in it. I'll say it a million times. If we can get in Lindor, Soto, Alonso, even Vientos has shown they can perform in October. All we got to do is get in. Just get in. But, I'm just an optimistic Met fan. Maybe I'm a little bit delusional, thinking that the Mets still have a shot. But let's see. It starts tonight. Peterson, let's get it on the right foot here. You were the man for the first 4 months of the year. Let's continue that. Okay, let's everybody will forget about your horrible August if you step it up and win. So, you know, and that's it. I mean, look, I mean, this has been a rough go. We all know that. Fan base is kind of giving up a little bit. I'm not. I'm going to stay positive. But, that raises a question that I kind of wanted to touch base with too on this show today. Do regular season wins matter as much as we think? Especially against certain teams. I mean, I know you have the tiebreakers and stuff like that, right? But I was thinking about it the other day, like other scenarios of teams that have kind of been sluggish the whole year and kind of just cruised, on neutral. Even looking at other sports, you look at that miracle New York Giants team that went on that magical run, being a 500 football team, and then went to Tampa Bay and beat Tampa Bay, went to Dallas and beat Dallas, went to Green Bay, beat Green Bay. And every single game, everybody was doubting them, saying they couldn't do it. And then they ended up beating the undefeated Patriots, winning the Super Bowl. Then you look at even baseball. I thought of a team that won, what was it, 82 or 83 games? The St. Louis Cardinals of 2006 that beat our beloved Mets. They didn't deserve to get to the playoffs that year. But the Cardinals got in. They had some star players that stepped up, like Pujols and Yadier Molina, Scott Rowland, all those guys. They had some pitching issues all year, kind of like how the Mets had. And then all of a sudden they kicked it into gear when they got into the postseason. And then they won. So could this Met team do the same thing? That's why I haven't given up completely. I understand Met fans giving up, but this is kind of why I still believe in this team. I believe that this next week will determine what they do going forward next year. If they collapse completely and don't make the postseason, I can see this team drastically changing. And that would be a shame because, that means that McNeil's probably expendable. Nemo is definitely going to be discussed. Everybody other than obviously the guys that are signed long term, like Lindor and Soto. I think Lindor and Soto, regardless of what happens this year, obviously they're going to be here. And then you have to think, do you resign Pete Alonso? I think you do. But yeah, those are going to be a lot of the questions that are going to be asked if this Met team doesn't win and continue on in 2025. I think that, I don't want this team to completely blow it up and start over, but if they don't make it, that's probably what's going to happen. So, and then obviously certain guys will get fired that I don't think should get fired. And that's really what this whole show has been about, is just me giving you my feelings on this. Is that, going into this season, I understand that the expectations were extremely high. Maybe that was our fault. Maybe that was the media's fault. I think, you add in the success that we had last year. But, I still believe all you got to do is get in. So, I understand the expectations. I understand why everybody has doubts. I don't. As foolish as that sounds, I feel like, what? Yes, the expectations were that we were supposed to win the division. I even said that we were going to win 90-something games. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So even though it upsets fans to hear this, I didn't care about the division title as much as everybody else did. I was okay with winning the wild card, but what the Mets are on the verge of doing, to me, is what I have an issue with. And that's why I'm kind of leaning a little bit with you guys with the whole being disappointed thing. But I still have the utmost confidence in this team that I think for some reason we're going to be seeing October baseball and we're going to get our mojo back come October. For some reason, I still can't completely give up on this team. As annoying as that may sound, but, that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, so that's really it. I don't really know what else to say with this episode. It's going to be a short one. But yeah, everything that I just said. I think that all we need to do is have one good week. And as funny as that sounds, the next 6 games could erase the last 156. And that's kind of silly to say, but that's the situation that we're in right now. So I'm just going to ride with that. Again, I thank you guys for always joining me. I want to thank all my friends on the YouTube channel that have subscribed. Keep subscribing. Like this video. I want to thank my TikTok family for embracing me and letting me, give you my little shorts that I do on TikTok. And I hope to continue doing this next year. I'm going to come do a lot of stuff in the off season. I might even go live. I haven't really decided yet. I think I'm going to go live maybe this weekend if the Mets don't completely collapse on me and make me not want to go live. But we'll see. Until then, thank you guys always for being amazing. And like I always say, let's go Mets and be amazing, everybody. I'll see you next week.